It was an eventful Elite Eight that ended in dramatic fashion with a shot that will live in infamy for Duke fans, and probably another poster to put up or framed image in UConn's basketball facilities. They'll have a chance to go for a third national title in 4 years for Dan Hurley and company. They are a stunner as they upset Duke. You've got Illinois upset Houston in Houston to get to their first Final Four since 2005. And then we've got a heavyweight fight in Arizona and Michigan in the other national semifinal. He's John Fanta. I'm Nicole Auerbach. And this is a tournament that we talk so much about Cinderellas. We want them there the first weekend, but you really want the best of the best at the end. And you are absolutely getting that with a Michigan-Arizona national semifinal game. These are two of the best teams that we've seen all year. I saw Michigan in action in Chicago's this regional this past weekend. And John, let me tell you, it was kind of boring how good they are, how elite the offensive ball movement is, just how many different ways they can beat you, the way that Yaxel Lendenborg can just kind of ignite the Michigan crowd. It's incredible. And when you watch Michigan play, you feel like you're watching the best team in the country. And when you watch Arizona play like you did in the second half of their Elite Eight game against Purdue, you also think you're watching the best team in the country. So that's going to be potentially an all-time great national semifinal.
It really will be. Clash of the Titans, and great to be with you, Nicole. Not to mention for Michigan, they're the first team in the history of the NCAA tournament to score 90-plus in their first 4 games and win all those games by double digits in the process. But then you turn to Arizona, who ran the Big 12, which the top of that league was the toughest in the sport all throughout the season. As deep as the Big 10 was, the top of the Big 12 was ridiculous. And Koa Pete, Braden Burries, those guys are just winners. And Jaden Bradley's the ultimate conductor at point guard. So on one side of the bracket, no questions asked, that is going to be an incredible nightcap to Final Four Saturday. On the other side, here you have a 3 seed in Illinois who, when I saw November and December, genuinely thought they had as much upside as any team in the sport, particularly offensively.
Yep.
On the other end of the floor, they've grown so much, and you got to give immense credit to Brad Underwood. I know we'll get into it, but what he's done in really building this thing out and completing a dream. March is a time for dreams. And Brad got emotional after the win in the Elite Eight. So for the Orange Crush and for Champaign, that is truly special. And then you turn to Sunday late afternoon, you think to yourself, well, this really wasn't that dramatic of an Elite Eight round. And you'd be right. But it's like the basketball god said, just when you think you know it all, you do not. And we do not have a third 1 seed going to Indianapolis. Because the Michael Myers of college basketball, the Connecticut Huskies, just would not die. And Braylon Mullins, who was Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana, he books a trip back home for the Final Four as a freshman on one of the most unreal sequences you will ever see. And Duke, as you just brought up, with back-to-back years of collapses that make your head spin. And somehow, some way, Connecticut, just 2 weeks after getting throttled by St. John's, the Big East Championship game, they are moving on to the Final Four, representing the Big East. And they're doing it in just absolutely wild fashion. A shot that will live on in the tournament, in the opens and the themes and all that forever.
So will the plays that led up to it, right? So as you mentioned, we'll just start with UConn. They're down by as many as 19 points. I want to give you one of the weirdest fun facts that I just don't even know what it means, but UConn enabled it and VCU enabled it. North Carolina and Duke both got knocked out of the NCAA tournament in games they led by 19 points. They blew 19-point leads to get knocked out of this tournament. Very weird. In the case of Duke, though, as you mentioned, it looked like we were headed to another blowout. We were going to have the third, kind of team of the year that we thought was one of the best teams, head and shoulders above everybody else all year, to advance to Indianapolis. And then you have the frantic comeback. You have so many UConn players that were just like unwilling for this to be the end of their season. And then Duke has the ball, a couple seconds on the clock, and they are trying to advance it. So UConn is pressing, and Caden Boozer just throws a terrible pass. It gets picked off. And the question that I have, John Fanta, is what were they doing in the first place? It looked like a team, and I understand Duke they just ran through the ACC. They were not challenged, not pressed a lot. They are led by freshmen, but they could have just held the ball and gotten fouled, right? Like in this situation, they didn't need to force a pass that would lead to obviously a very costly turnover. And Caden Boozer was very emotional in the press conference, in the locker room afterwards, putting the blame on that loss on himself for this pass. But they didn't need to do it. They didn't need to push it up the court, right? Like what was happening in this play? Like the whole sequence was crazy because you're yelling. You're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Intercepted, boom, boom, pass, and then the ultimate game-winning shot.
It falls on the coach. It falls on the coach. He had a timeout in his pocket, and it was not taken. And look, I'm not saying that because I want to generate hot take city here, but you just talked about it. Their team is young. I also would say that this was not last year's Atlantic Coast Conference. The ACC sent 8 teams to the NCAA tournament this year. The ACC had a very good year. For them to not have a Final Four team is a big disappointment. And for Jim Phillips to be sitting courtside watching that in real time, it's an absolute gut punch of a loss. But this is now a thing with Jon Scheyer. Last year I thought that it was a little bit like, prisoner of the moment. Okay, he can't win the big one. Well, look, he's in his 30s, and he's done a great job replacing Mike Krzyzewski. But, Nicole, you have 2 of these in a row in games that you really should have won. You should have won these games. I know it's hard to, but, Nicole, they were the better team for 36 minutes of the game, I would say. Maybe 34. And if you watch the video, and those videos are out there, John is saying to his team to keep advancing the basketball.
Yeah.
So that's why, yes, Caden Boozer made a mistake, but it shouldn't have gotten the ball shouldn't have made it to him. Dominic Sarr is sitting there on the baseline. Dominic Sarr, who's a capable shooter, could have just taken the foul, gone to the line, and look, even if he has a snafu at the free throw line, first off, they're still up 2. He just needs to make 1. Okay? Now, it was 1-1. It was 1-1, but still. There's so much that UConn would then have had to advance the ball up the court, find a look. Sometimes that can lead to such a shuffle of activity. This was inconceivable. It's unfathomable why Duke was trying to pass the ball up the floor with a lead. There's so many circumstances. We both watch this sport on the men's and women's sides all the time, and you just don't see that, nor alone a team like Duke. A team as good as Duke that had won in that building. They beat Michigan in that building. I have no explanation for the missed execution in that slot. And I don't think it's acceptable to just say their team is young, because those kids had fought through so much all year, had beaten so many big time opponents. It's an inexplicable mistake in the biggest of moments.
It is, and Jon Scheyer will now have to deal with the fact that the thing everyone will want to know about him and know if he's improved and know if it's changed, you can't do anything about until the second weekend in March. And I think about Jay Wright, used to have that reputation as couldn't make it out of the first weekend until all of a sudden he could, and he could win national titles, plural. That is going to be Jon Scheyer's life. I still think it's an amazing succession plan that Duke had in place. He's an incredible recruiter. I think he's going to win national titles at Duke, but this is absolutely going to be a thing that haunts them now. These blown leads at this point in the tournament, and to not even get to the Final Fours. And now this is another weird stat. Duke is actually in the longest stretch of not winning a national championship, 11 years, than it had since Coach K won the first national championship in 1991. So this is actually a drought by Duke standards.
And you could argue that they never had more talent. I mean, and
Right.
you'd probably, I mean, you'd be close to right. I know they've had unbelievable classes, but you had Zion Williamson, Cooper Flag, and now Cam Boozer.
Yep.
And it's not like it was one man shows. You had loaded teams. Now this Duke team, I was concerned about their 3-point shooting, but for a large portion of the game, they hit some very timely threes. I thought Dame Sarr and Nick Kamenya were really good. The flip side of this needs to be talked about, though, because Dan Hurley has a UConn team, Nicole, that I've seen a couple times. Just as much as they had a really strong season, when they got exposed, it was tough. Like, they made 3 threes against Marquette, a Marquette team that was not even close to the NCAA tournament, and they got beat in Milwaukee. And Hurley gets thrown out of the game. Like, remember that the last week of the regular season? So the instantaneous thought is they're not playing their best at the right time. They're falling off. They're fading away. And you wouldn't have necessarily been wrong. In the Big East Championship game, they were non-competitive with St. John's. This just goes to show you, though, when the tournament begins. I mean, ask Ben McCollum. Iowa was in it late. When the tournament starts, you never know what can happen. It does breathe a new life into a team, and it has brought a whole new life for the guy who Dan Hurley told us in November, December, and January. Unless he wakes up, we're not going to be a big-time team. And the name he kept using was Terrace Reed. Terrace Reed played like Patrick Ewing in Washington, D.C. on Sunday. Nicole, he controlled the second half. It was his best game. Ironically, a former Michigan man. And he could see his former team in a championship game. How about that for a storyline? He just took on the game. And Alex Caravan didn't have it all day. He hit a timely 3. Solo Ball hit a timely 3. Braylon Mullins comes up with the unbelievable shot. This might come off crazy to fans, but I believe it to be true. In 23 and 24, Dan Hurley had the best team in the tournament. This, though, getting this team to the Final Four is in the way that they just won this game, is his most memorable coaching job of his career thus far.
I think that people who will look at this closely will agree, because it is hard to wring every ounce of potential out of a team. And there was an interesting quote Alex Caravan, who is obviously on those championship teams, said after the game that March he kind of thought was easy because those teams were so much better than the teams that they were playing, and that this has been a different experience. They've really had to learn, prepare, all the different things to win at the margins in these games. And now Dan Hurley, over 4 years, 17-1 in the NCAA tournament, that one loss coming to the eventual national champion, Florida. They're back now in position to win their 3rd national title in 4 years. And I want to talk a little bit about this matchup, because we mentioned it right off the top. Illinois into the Final Four for the first time since 2005. This is a program that has won so many games. They've had great players. They've had heartbreaking finishes. And they also got blown out by UConn en route to one of these national titles in that 30-0 run. That Michigan came close to matching, by the way, in a 21-0 run in their Elite Eight game against Tennessee. But this is an Illinois team and program that has the unfortunate label of being the most successful college basketball program without winning a national title. Like, they're too good to be this good without cutting down the nets. And you have a coach in Brad Underwood who has said this is his dream job. He has said that, he's emotional about this place and about what it can be. He became a head coach for the first time at age 49. He started his career in JUCOs. He's been at the low major level. He was a high major assistant. And he's one of the best coaches in the game. John, we mentioned this. He kind of first put himself on the map more nationally when Stephen F. Austin pulled off that big upset of West Virginia and Brooklyn. That was my first real introduction to him, like, in person. And then obviously he goes from there to Oklahoma State and then to Illinois. And the way that he built this roster is really fascinating, because you and I were with him at Media Day at the start of the season, and we're asking the players, like, do you guys all have passports? Like, are we planning a big Euro trip because of how many different places everyone is from? How do you mesh all of that? And they clearly do. And they figured out all these different roles. And then Keaton Wagler has been just unbelievable. And like so far ahead of anyone's expectations for him as a freshman to go to become a lottery pick, and an undeniable lottery pick at that. Like it's a really remarkable team story, this Illinois team.
Yeah, it really is. And their level of talent is superb. Having some of their games in November and December, you just watched them and you thought, man, this team has as much upside as perhaps any in college basketball. Maybe that's reflective in their 3 seed, that they weren't a 1 seed, because they had some games where, like, they lost a home game to Wisconsin, a game that they had in the bag. They had a couple of losses that made you say, okay, they were right there, but they couldn't fully come through. But they still were an extraordinary team. To me, the wildest story, and we'll get to the international talent in just a moment, but Nicole, Keaton Wagler, the only other high major offer was from Minnesota. It was Minnesota and Illinois for Keaton Wagler. And he's been as good as any guard in this tournament. He has 25 points against Iowa to book a ticket to the Final Four. This guy has, 3 stars next to his name. He's not a top 10 recruit. He's not a top 50 on the national rankings recruit. So to me, the fact that Brad, who knew he would have Kylan Boswell, brought in a guard who, together, they form this fire and ice in terms of how they play. And then you couple that with this guy's logging thousands of miles, and he's got to be loving his international recruiting. You might have a glass of whatever European red that you like during the nighttime, and then you're hitting games the next day, and he has knocked it out of the park. I mean, David Mirkovic has just been phenomenal for them. Andrei Stojakovic, who was a transfer, they formed him into the best version of themselves. The Ivisic brothers.
They found the right place for him and the right style and the fit. He's been unbelievable. And I just wanted to underscore the European flavor here. These guys did not know how to cut the net. Did you see that video?
Yes, they did.
It's so funny.
They did not know how to cut the net. No.
They did not know how to cut the net. And Mirkovic was the one who was pulling on it. Like, he got up there and he thought he was just supposed to pull it off the rim. Incredible. And then you've got the twins. You've got like just the size, the offensive skill, the ability that this team has. They are so hard to deal with offensively in the paint.
That they are
defensively for opponents.
Yeah, for an opposing defense. And that's the thing with this game now. Now, it bears noting, these two teams met on Black Friday at Madison Square Garden, and UConn, they outlasted Illinois. They controlled them in the second half. Neither team was totally at full strength, right? So things have changed since then.
And Wagler wasn't like playing the way that he is. I mean, he didn't score that way. He didn't even play. He played like 14 minutes in that game too.
That's it. And that was the game that Brad Underwood turned to his staff and said, we got to change something. Like, if we want to be one of the nation's elite. So isn't it interesting, Nicole? You find this on both the men's and women's side, like the marathon of a season. And coaches realize something about their team sometimes in a loss. It's why you should schedule. Like, play people so that you learn your flaws. They learned in that game, we got to play Wagler more. Yep. And now he's as big a reason as any. But you said it best. Roster construction in this sport has never been more important. Dusty May and Tommy Lloyd have done an ace job of that on the other side of the bracket. But give Brad the credit that he's due. And you're right. Like, it's been 21 years for Illinois basketball. This is a refreshing storyline to see them back in the Final Four, and their fans are. This is going to be one hot ticket because you're in Big Ten country.
Yep. It's about So, Champaign's like 2 hours south of Chicago. We got a ton of Illinois grads in Chicago. Indy's 3.5 from me. I mean, it's a little triangle, and then you throw in Michigan, which is 4.5 hours north. Like, it's going to be crazy. And then you're going to have these Arizona fans, and you could hear them in San Jose, who have also been starved for this and for a first Final Four since Lute Olson in 2001. I thought one of my favorite moments of the whole weekend was Tommy Lloyd grabbing the mic, which you are not supposed to give up control of that mic. That is one of the first rules they teach you about working in TV. he grabs the mic so that he can tell the whole crowd and he can say that there is a good-looking white-haired man smiling down on them right now. I'm very happy. And it was this great moment of continuity because, and he was so clear in his post-game press conferences about this too, and it gave Sean Miller his flowers too. That is such a smart and basketball-obsessed community in Tucson. And as Arizona fans, it means so much. You had so many great teams, 1 and 2 seed level, great teams under Sean Miller that could not get out of the second weekend. And this team does it, and they do it in a no-doubter way with the way that they pulled away in that second half against Purdue. And that's one of the things I love most about this Final Four. Like, yes, we're super excited to see Arizona and Michigan match up and all of the above, and UConn and this momentum and these like historic shots that are getting them here. But honestly, I'm so happy for Arizona and Illinois fans who haven't been here in forever. There are so many people, including like basically all their players, I would assume, were not alive, the last time that this happened. You have adult men crying over the feelings that this is bringing up in them. It's what we love about sports. We talked about it so many times during the Indiana football run, getting to witness your team do something, and it's been forever, or they've never done it before. Michigan actually hasn't even been to the Final Four since 2018. It feels like it was just yesterday, but you think back about those Beeline teams. He had 2 that played for the national title. And then you had the Juwan Howard years. And then you had that really rough year, which was the one and the team that Dusty May inherited. But I want to go back to Arizona for a second because this is, again, one of the best basketball fan bases in the country. The McHale Center is awesome, like the environment, this place. And as you said, they've been incredibly fun to watch. And you think about the veteran leadership on this team and the Jaden Bradley. You think about the freshmen that have really, really stepped up. And then Koa Pete being the local guy from right outside of Phoenix who stays and decides to try to do this and take Arizona back to a Final Four. And he has a really big game after, he had the beginning of the year was great. And then there were some ups and some downs. So it just felt like a beautiful full circle moment for the Arizona program and for Tommy Lloyd, who, this is the first place he's been a head coach. He was with Mark Few for 2 decades, and he's got his own crazy story. For him to be the one to take Arizona back to the Final Four was also really cool.
Really cool. And Tommy had not made it past the Sweet 16 until this year. And then so people, that becomes part of, okay, can they do it? He's always been a phenomenal coach. And now he's in the spotlight, and rightfully so. And the guy's won close to 85% of the games he's coached in at Arizona. That's amazing. That's amazing. Like, yes, they're a proud program. And yes, they bring in terrific talent. But he's been winning at a level that really is special. Remember, when he takes the job, this is an Arizona program that went through a time of turmoil. I mean, Sean Miller was winning, but Nicole, they were in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons with how that ended, with him and Book Richardson. That was a really brutal story for their program. So a lot of people are wondering, are they going to be able to stay at the level they've been at? Nicole, they've done better than stay. They move into the Big 12. You want to learn how Big 12 expansion's gone? Well, Houston's done the Big 12 well, and now Arizona is delivering for this league. And you brought it up with the freshmen. Like, what I love about this story is, to the people who say you can't get it done with freshmen, they've blended it all. Koa Pete is the son of a longtime NFL player. His dad played in the National Football League, and Koa is beyond his years. Brayden Burries, if you watched him in grassroots basketball, all the guy did was win. He was always part of winning, and now he's doing it at Arizona. Karchenkov, you go the international route, he comes in, he adds the word for this team: physicality. Yes. That's why the showdown with Michigan is so interesting, because as you saw firsthand and you've seen throughout the season, Michigan is so physically imposing. You look at them and you're like, oh my gosh, they're huge. Arizona carries that same weight. They're a wagon. They're an avalanche of a team. They guard the heck out of you. They don't do it from beyond the arc, and that's what makes it special. They go to the rim, and they beat you at will.
The Avalanche is a good comparison because that is what it felt like in the second half of that Elite Eight game. Because they were just playing the way that they wanted to your point about not needing threes, trailing in a game, but not feeling like that's the only way back into a game as well. And you look at Arizona and Illinois in particular, this year has been the year of the freshmen, right? We've seen some of these incredible stories and development and just like the seamless transition to the collegiate game. You have that, which is one of the stories of why this has been such a great college basketball season. The international players on some of these teams, because again, you have two of the best staffs at recruiting internationally. Tommy Lloyd's came up through that. Like he was Gonzaga's international recruiter, like the best recruiter in the country, outside of the country. So you have all of these things blending, and then you have the veterans, you have the size inside and some of the stylistic things that a Michigan or an Arizona or an Illinois can exploit. And it just feels like this Final Four really, you kind of just wraps its arm around where the sport is right now and the way that people are winning. And the Michigan team, I think, really embodies that. Having just seen them up close and personal, the size really stands out. Elliot Godot and his ability to get the ball to all the right places and get all these different guys going. I was talking to the staff after the game, and they said he's the secret sauce. And obviously, I think if you watch them, you can tell that. You might think sometimes it's Yaxel Lendenborg because, he can just completely jolt them. And obviously him being able to shoot threes and then also being able to drive. And he has like beautiful reverse layup and like these moments, of course. But Godot has been unbelievable for them. And he is the thing that makes the whole system go and makes it work. But they just have such a unique skill set. Dusty Mays talked a lot about how, the wanting size, but maybe like this kind of fell into his lap that they would have this many bigs and trying to get them all to play together and all the team chemistry stuff and the selflessness. But man, when they are firing on all cylinders, it's hard to imagine a team that can beat them. And I know we've seen them get beat this year, but as you look forward, them at their best and Arizona at their best, like I hope that's what we get, because that's good on good. These are two of the best teams in the country, according to Ken Pom, defensively, and also two of the best offensive teams in the country when you look at efficiency as well. So it's kind of like rock meets a hard place when you look at this game, although I think we're going to see a lot of points. Like it's not going to be an ugly game here, even though these are great defensive teams. But there's just so much talent that's going to be on the floor at the same time.
There's so much talent. How the game gets officiated will be fascinating because Adai Mara doesn't have to jump to block a shot. As you know, I mean, we're all jealous watching how.
Yeah, he's
how
like right at the rim. He's like eye to eye. It's crazy.
Morez Johnson, I laugh when Johnson comes out of the game and Mara comes in, because if you're the opponent, you're looking over and you're saying, do we get a break? And the answer is no, you really don't. There's a couple things with Michigan. Number one, Elliot Cadeau. Elliot Cadeau has always been talented, but in North Carolina, he was not disciplined. And earlier this season, I asked Dusty May, I said, what's impressed you the most about Elliot? He said the way that he sacrificed some of the extremes to his game that we know he's got in his package, and said, I'm going to follow the system. I'm going to play disciplined basketball. That's a credit to Elliot and his maturity because it's benefiting the rest of the team. Yaxel Lendenborg doesn't care if he scores 30 points or 10. He cares about one thing, winning. He came to Michigan to win a championship. People could say, well, he came to Michigan to also make a lot of money. They have money, but so do the other heavyweights in the sport. Yaxel Lendenborg cares about the right things. Nicole, you just saw it in person. Of all the players that you watched, is there a guy that represents playing the game the right way more than Yaxel Lendenborg? He always makes the right play.
Yes. And I was talking to, again, their staff, multiple assistants, and they were just talking about Yaxel plays with so much joy. Like it's fun. It looks fun to him. And he hasn't actually been playing basketball that long, right? And so that's part of it. Like he's still kind of, it's like when you're a kid and you fall in love with the sport for the first time. And I really think that helps understand, his style of play, the fearlessness, the selflessness, as you said. If he doesn't care if he doesn't score a point, if he could just, kind of absorb all of the opponent's attention and everybody else can shoot, he'd be so happy about that. But it all just works. It's obviously he's older. A lot has been made about that. He's a veteran player. He over the weekend, I don't know if you caught this because you were at a different site, but he was kind of like inventing all of these little like chip on his shoulder moments, like motivation. So it was like, oh, Nate Oates didn't call me when I was, leaving UAB to go into the portal. And like Nate Oates was like, yeah, I did. And then Dusty Bay was like, yeah, he did. Like, he's like, don't tell Yaxel, but like they definitely tried to recruit him. Like I talked to Nate Oates about it. And then he got at one point I also was like, oh, I was, offended that they had a freshman guarding me. And it's like his teammates like are looking at him and they're just like giggling when he does this because to quote Dusty, he's just inventing little subplots, but it's so funny. Like I could see why other fan bases can be annoyed by him, but covering him is a lot of fun. He is a super interesting, engaging person. His story is amazing. And it was just like, March Roddy is a thing for Roddy Gale. Like there's just a lot going on with this team right now that we were worried. We weren't sure this version was going to come back out because in the Big Ten tournament, all those games were tight. We saw them lose to Purdue. We're wondering how big the impact of, backup guard LJ Cason's injury was going to be for Michigan. And as it turns out, they've, again, adapted. Guys have, figured out like substitutions, roles, all the things they needed to do. And they're back to just blowing people out. As you mentioned, 90 plus points in every NCAA tournament game. And like, they're not close. Like it's not competitive. I was looking around at I was sitting right in front of the Tennessee family and friends section. And there was just this like look of resignation because they still had to get through the whole second half, and it was just like, there's just nothing you can do when Michigan is firing on all cylinders like that. And I think we have to talk about Dusty May because he inherited a team. Again, it's a program that has had success. They've obviously won a national title in '89. You had the Fab Five. John Beeline, who took over when I was a student, like totally changed the trajectory of the program, got them back up to the nation's elite, this close to a national championship or two. But they were 8 wins, 3 wins in the Big Ten the year before Dusty takes over. And it was a Dusty May sweepstakes. Everybody wanted him. We thought maybe he was going to go to Louisville. You're wondering about Indiana making a change and them being in the market for their former student assistant. Michigan swoops in and gets him. And it's just, it's unbelievable how quick it has totally turned around, how perfect he is for Michigan, culturally, stylistically, the way he recruits, the way, like it's been a perfect fit. And to be taking a team like this in year 2 to a Final Four with a very good chance to be the first Big Ten team since 2000 to win a national title, like to be one of the heavy hitters, one of the favorites left, is really remarkable. And he's so young. He's had so much success that you just kind of like project it out, and Michigan fans kind of can't believe their luck that they won that sweepstakes.
And my takeaway from the day is War Manual after the game saying, my goal now in life is to keep Dusty May as forever, to have him here lifetime. And here's the thing. Michigan's got the resources to do that. And I think you have to adjust how you talk about college basketball in a similar way that you talk about adjustments in college football, like with I'm not saying Dusty May is the Kurt Signetti of college basketball at all, because Michigan has a proud tradition in their own right. But what I'm saying is this. Kurt Signetti's staying at Indiana. Why? Because he has everything he needs there. And it's never not going to be the case with that administration in place. As long as Scott Dolson's sitting in that chair, Indiana is going to continue to be very, very committed. Well, you leave if you feel like you need to leave. And in the modern day era, Michigan, they've got as much, if not more, than some of the prouder brands in college basketball. You're not leaving for better resources. You're certainly not leaving for a better conference. Big Ten just show they're the best league. Does your brand resonate in college sports? It's Michigan. Of course it resonates. I think that there's going to be, in 3 to 5 years, let's look at the modern day blue bloods of college sports. And we could look at football. We could look at them basketball. It's a popular term in basketball. And I think Michigan checks all the boxes to be a, quote, modern day blue blood with their setup. They have unbelievable budget. They've got a situation that I think really just fits Dusty. And if he could do this in year 2 on the job, why can't he do this in year 3, 4, 5? Like, they are set up here for not just good success, they're set up for outstanding success. And you give him credit because in a world of 3-point shooting, and they can hit threes, he follows the mold of what a lot of the heavyweights are doing. And he says, I'm going to get huge and we're going to play. And he didn't just start it this year. He did it last year because he had Danny Wolf, who he brought in from Yale. And he had Vlad Golden, who he brought with him from FAU. So he knows how to build it out.
Yes. I think that's a great point. Because we talked about this recently, you and I. Todd Golden made this point that, if you're trying to stave off upsets, you avoid, stretch fours and every guy plays outside and it's all about spacing. No, you get back to size, physicality, offensive rebounding, because then you're going to get more chances to score. And it doesn't matter if more of them are going to be 2-point shots than threes. But obviously, Michigan has the 3-point ability too. So it's very hard to take something away from them, which is why I think it's so fun to play in for the players. They obviously are playing with a lot of joy. A lot of different people can be kind of their leading scorer on any given night. And anybody can kind of either, lead a fast break or hit a big three that kind of turns things around or gets them going. It's been really, really impressive. And I'm with you totally. I think if you can win a national championship at your school where you are and you're in the conference that has the most resources, that is getting that money, that your school is, the revenue is being produced and it's coming to you and you're getting the fruits of that labor, then you've got nowhere else to go. You've got nothing else to chase unless it's the NBA, which is apples to oranges. But I think that, they are absolutely well positioned for years to come and to be a perennial contender. You mentioned, the Big Ten. So before we get out of here,
yes,
I do want to get your thoughts on if this is the year. The Big Ten has not won a national championship since 2000. It was Michigan State. It was Tom Izzo. He is still chasing another national championship. He wants to come back. He's not done coaching because he believes he can do it. It has been a very long time since. There have been a number of teams that have been runners up that have been really, really close to doing it. You've got 2 of the 4 teams left out of the Big Ten in Michigan and Illinois. Michigan has been a title contender all year. Could be a nice little bookend moment here of Michigan State won that title in 2000 in Indianapolis. That's where the Final Four is this year. So can they do it? I think we both say yes. Will they do it, John Fanta?
I think that they will. And we picked Michigan last week, and Arizona fans are not going to be happy with me and have certainly gotten upset with me before in this tournament. But a lot of people are saying, I wish Michigan and Arizona were in the national championship game and not in the semifinal. I couldn't disagree. And guess what? I disagreed because of this reason. All right, hear me out. You get a full week. Oftentimes in the championship game, at least one of the teams out on the floor does not look like themselves. Because I just think at that point, you're on a 6th game, you are fatigued, and you're not. Very rarely do we see a team play their absolute best game in the very last game. I mean, there are selections, but if they blow a team out, it's because the opponent is worn down. And so I love the fact that this Clash of the Titans, the number one, we're going to talk about it all week. This is going to be the talk all week of Michigan, Arizona, who you got. Not to put down Duke, UConn, and Illinois, but the Michigan-Arizona game is the game that everybody wants to see.
It's the headliner.
And I think that the week-long buzz, the front court matchup, both teams having ample rest, sets up for the epic showdown to potentially live up to it. But if you're Michigan, when Michigan plays to the level that they are capable of, I don't believe that there's anyone who can beat them. And I don't believe that there's anybody who can stay within 5 points of them. So I think that's the fascination. Could Arizona beat Michigan? Of course they can. I mean, they've only lost twice the entire season. They're an unbelievable team. They are so good. Like I want to make that clear to Arizona fans. You have an incredible physical, just a bear of a team. But that's Michigan's strength, Nicole. And Michigan, they say to your lack of 3-point volume, we're going to knock down threes. because we have Trey McKinney, we have Roddy Gale, we have Elliot Cadeau, we have Lendeborg, we even have Will Cheddar who can come in and hit a shot for us. And so I think and Illinois is capable of beating Connecticut. I'm so fascinated to see how that game goes, because you're going to see Keaton Wagler versus Silas Demery is one of my biggest keys to that game. And then can Illinois try to get Terrace Reed in foul trouble? It seems like right now Reed is unbeatable, but
Yeah.
I want to see how Arizona plans to score on Michigan, because you know this. You just watched it twice. If you're going to score consistently on Michigan, I think you've got to hit perimeter shots. But Arizona is one of the lowest volume shooting teams from beyond the arc in college basketball.
Yeah, I'm with you completely on that. And I think the point about the officiating is going to be really important, because that was so critical to the way the Tennessee game played out. It was clear that the officials were not going to call a foul every single time on both ends, right? But the game was super physical both ways. And there were times where Michigan was definitely getting a friendlier whistle, but like that's just really hard, because they have weathered those stretches when Mara or somebody has a couple fouls and has to come out. They've got different bodies and they still have the size. And to your point, they still have the 3-point shooting, if you're going to bring in Cheddar or somebody else. So it's really hard to completely take that away, to take away the inside and outside for Michigan. And to your point, if your strength is not as, a 3-point shooting team, you've got to keep pace basically every single time down the court. And I do think it's going to be too much. I was so impressed by Michigan, as we were most of this season as well. And the only questions were coming out of the Big Ten tournament. And I think that they're the best team in the country when they're playing their best. And I don't have a great feel for the other game, because Illinois has played so much better defensively over the last couple of games. Like, I don't even think the metrics have like updated truly to reflect like how they're playing defensively now. And then UConn, to your point, like doesn't die. And, Alex Caravan's clearly not ready for his season to be over. He didn't play well in the Elite Eight, but we've seen him take over games well before that. So I almost want to take UConn just because it's UConn and Danny Hurley is almost unbeatable in the NCAA tournament. They're playing a little bit with house money. I don't know. So is Illinois, I guess. That's kind of the way that you're going to view it. So what's your pick on that game? I don't have a great sense of it, but I kind of just want to take UConn because I'm tired of thinking someone else is going to dethrone them.
Well, Illinois has got to be so fueled to try to get back at UConn. I mean, but they can't let that become the game. Like, they can't let that be what it becomes about. But Brad Underwood, no, I mean, it's a fitting demon of sorts to exercise. Not that it's a demon, but the fact is,
that was a historic loss that they had at the hands of UConn 2 years ago. It's very fresh in everyone's mind.
It is, and it was a very real part of the Illinois story. It's like sometimes when you play that game, it teaches you what you have to do to actually get back. And now they've gotten back, and fittingly, this is the obstacle that stands between them and the national championship game. So, yeah, there's a lot of intrigue. I think it will be really interesting to see if Andre Stojakovic can have a better game than an Alex Caravan. If the Ivisic brothers can create problems for Terrace Reed. If Mirkovic, one thing about Illinois, they have better take you off the dribble shooters and playmakers take you off the dribble than Connecticut. But Connecticut's system is so unstoppable at times. I'm going to take UConn because I'm not going against them, and you can't. You just can't. They're 17-1 in the last 18 tournament games. You're going to go against that? Yeah. I'm not going against them. But Illinois' upside and talent, this is going to be will Illinois pack their defense to Indy? If they pack their defense, it's going to be difficult for UConn. But UConn runs their stuff. I thought Duke would out-defend UConn, and they did for 30 minutes. And then UConn, their shot-making late was absurd. So I like UConn. I'll take UConn. I'll take Michigan. I've got Michigan winning the championship. That's what we had last week. But you are the headline of the weekend to me, of all the headlines. If not now, then when? There's never been a better chance for the Big Ten to get their national championship. This is their chance to rule over all of college sports and to put all the naysayers. But there have been people that have ragged on Big Ten basketball for years because the league cannot produce a national champion. You have never had a better shot than this one.
Yeah.
This is the time to go and get it done.
So maybe I'll actually, just so we don't have the exact same picks, I'll take Illinois so that it's an all Big Ten national championship game, which guarantees that it will be that the streak will be snapped. I'll go, like, Dusty May kind of made this joke because they had half of the Elite Eight. He says, well, why don't we just have 4 Big Ten teams in the Final Four, and you just don't have to worry about it. So let's do that. I'll pick Illinois and I'll pick Michigan to meet for a championship game in Indianapolis, the heart of Big Ten country. But it's going to be so much fun. John, I'm so excited for this Final Four. Incredibly compelling. These 2 fan bases that have waited more than 2 decades to get back to this moment, and UConn that had to wait a whole year away from the Final Four before they come back to get to play for a national championship. It's going to be a blast. Always so much fun to talk hoops with you. And shall we catch up maybe after the net is cut and the confetti falls? Would you like to do that?
With some St. Elmo's cocktail sauce. And
yes,
shout out to both you and our teammate Jason Gold for staying up late on this Sunday night. My Apple laptop is like a 15 seed that got beat by 30 right now. And you both stuck the course with me. I appreciate you guys. And then there were 4. Let's party.
All right. For John Fanta, I'm Nicole Auerbach. This is NBC Sports, and we will have final breakdown after the national championship game. John and I will be back then. Enjoy the basketball.